Welcome back to Money Majlis, the podcast that features the movers and shakers from the world of banking, fintechs, technology, and marketing. Today, we are in Mumbai, India, to talk to an iconic CEO who has redefined branding and marketing for a low involvement consumer brand. But first, a commercial break.
This podcast is proudly brought to you by MasterCard.
Money Majlis is sponsored by Weo Bank. Fuel your ambitions with banking designed to power your success. Discover more at weo.io.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Network International, the leading digital payments technology company in the Middle East and Africa.
Money Majlis is proudly supported by Aqua Now, the premier crypto-as-a-service provider, now building in partnership with the top financial institutions in the Middle East. Discover more at aquanow.com.
I am in Mumbai, India today to talk to Bharat Puri, the managing director of Pidilite Industries, a leading global manufacturer of industrial adhesives, pigments, waterproofing solutions, and other chemicals. Bharat Puri is an MBA from the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, and has been the managing director for Pidilite Industries since 2015. Starting his career with Asian Paints, Bharat rose to become the youngest head of sales and marketing before moving to Cadbury's, where he took over as the managing director in 2002. He subsequently did a number of regional and global roles, culminating in his becoming global president for chocolates, gum and candy for Mondelez International. He has worked in numerous geographies and today sits as independent director in a few boards. Bharat is a keen sports fan and an avid reader, and his wife Alka has been my close friend for 40 years since our days together at business school. I have known Bharat as a creative and passionate leader since our days together in Asian Paints, where I spent a year after my MBA. Through his various corporate roles, Bharat has created and nurtured some very strong brands. His brand campaigns for Asian Paints, Cadbury's, and Fevicol are the stuff of legends. This is one conversation I've been looking forward to for some time. Bharat, wonderful to have you in the Money Majlis studio today. We're sitting in Bombay with a beautiful view of the Arabian Ocean, and I'm in front of one of the market icons of India. I'm privileged, of course, very pleased to have this time with you. How are you doing, Bharat?
I am doing well, Show, and it is wonderful to see you after ages, wonderful to interact. I remember you as a young, slim, asking many questions management trainee, and I find that the asking many questions has not changed.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Just my weight has changed a bit since then.
All our weights have changed.
But Bharat, amazing to have you, for the next hour or so with me to quiz you about the various things you've done in your career, your stellar career over the last, well, almost 35, 40 years?
42 years.
42 years, amazing. Let me start with, one question I've been wanting to ask you about the iconic brand Fevicol, which has gone beyond just being India's most trusted adhesive to being part of the collective Indian customer psyche. And I believe it's the only country in the world where adhesive brand is among the top 10 consumer brands nationally. It's featured in a well-known Bollywood song, which we all know about, as well as I believe it with a speech by Prime Minister in Japan to form the bond between India and Japan. I mean, you covered Bollywood, you covered diplomacy. Clearly, hats off to you and your team for making a product that is typically a low involvement category into something which is top of mind. Tell us, Bharat, what makes the brand resonate so well with customers and influencers across multiple segments? And more importantly, what does it take to build and sustain such a trusted and loved brand?
That's a great question, Shiva. See, Fevicol is the heart of Pidilite.
Mm-hmm.
Fevicol is what Pidilite, in a sense, started with. It embodies, before that, it was only animal glues in India, the first synthetic glue, so as to say. I think the real credit for building the Fevicol brand goes to our founder and then his son, the current chairman.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to think in those days, we're talking of the 60s, that listen, the best way to build this brand is to engage the carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
And the first almost tenet of the brand has always been outstanding product quality. Just build a better product and demonstrate it to users on a regular basis so that they adopt the product.
Mm-hmm.
Slowly give consumers a reason why. In a low involvement category like adhesives, nobody knows what's the adhesive used on furniture once they have furniture.
Correct.
But the fascinating thing, Shubho, is today in India, 8 out of 10 consumers will send back any adhesive that they see in their home if it is not Fevicol.
My God.
Fevicol is the mark of long-lasting bonds and long-lasting furniture.
Mm-hmm.
And this is really a testimony to the work done over a period of more than 60 years.
Mm-hmm.
The having the vision to build this again as a consumer brand. And if you look at the history of the brand, it starts with rational strengths. You know, here is an adhesive that is very strong, and slowly and steadily it just becomes emotional. And today, the fascinating thing is the brand lives in the consumer universe, so as to say. Every week,
Mm-hmm.
we have at least 2 or 3 headlines on Fevicol by somebody or other. There'll be one politician saying that our alliance is built with Fevicol. The
Haha.
other guy will say this guy stuck to his seat with Fevicol. People use Fevicol in as an adjective on a regular basis as a commonplace word, which, I mean, any foreigner is completely fascinated by. So when, people outside India suddenly hear, oh, these two are stuck with Fevicol, and they will all ask, what is Fevicol?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think this is just the power of consistent communication, both to users, influencers, and then the consumer over a large period of time, which has therefore, in a sense, just made it this iconic brand, which stands for any two things that you want them to stuck together for a long period of time. It's Fevicol.
So Bharat, the question on that is, if you can't control the usage of the word outside just your brand story, outside of marketing and a product story, is there a danger that it is used out of context and there's some negatives that come through with it? Or is that not a problem?
See, there is always a danger, but there is so much consumer affection on the brand, and we always give the consumer a little less credit than for their intelligence than they deserve. Consumers are smart enough to know where it is used and how it is used, and you know it may bring a little smile to their faces, like little things. I remember when Cristiano Ronaldo removed the Coke bottle, if you remember,
Yeah.
from his.
Yeah.
We immediately put a Fevicol can and tweeted that try and remove this. And my God, it got views all across the world, so on and so forth, etc.
Mm.
I think consumers have a lot more affection for the brand than we give them credit for. And therefore, even if a brand like this is now not your brand anymore, it's the consumer's brand, there will be some amount of misuse, but I think you have to just take it on the chin and move on.
Now, you talked about the brand there, obviously amazing brand. And a large part of what has made Fevicol so popular is its very memorable and very sharp advertising, which is so down to earth and so relatable by all segments of consumers across all socioeconomic strata and geography. Now, I mean, this is a big story, of course, about how you and O&M as an agency created this whole brand together over the last, I don't know how many decades. And personally, you and Piyush Pandey and Prasun Joshi, iconic figures in the world of marketing and advertising, have built this, over many, many years. Now, I know you, in addition with Piyush, started in Asian Paints, and you worked together. In fact, it's referred to as a Mazboot Jor of in the advertising world. What does it take, Bharat, to create, such a strong bond and trust with agencies? Which in Piyush's words, you own his shower time, is what he says. How does this magic work? Because, I've worked in many companies and dealt with agencies. There's always tension. There's always who takes the credit. Here it seems you jointly take the credit for everything that's happened. And, you have created something phenomenal. How do you make this work?
Again, great question. I think when you've got this decades-long relationship, and just a clarification, I think the real credit is Piyush Prasoon Pandey, who's always been our filmmaker, and the Parekh family, who've been shepherding the brand. My role has been a steward over the last, say, 10
I
years
mean,
or
your
so.
chairman and your earlier
Yes.
chairman, etc. Yeah, 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 of course.
Having said that, you know, I'm a very firm believer, having been in the marketing business for close to over 40 years. I think at times when you let the finance or the procurement fellows start running marketing,
Hmm.
and you start treating marketing as an expense, and at times marketers themselves are to blame. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's the beginning of the end. To
Hmm.
my mind, an advertising agency cannot be a supplier. An advertising agency must be a partner.
Hmm.
Easy to say, very difficult to do.
Hmm.
Just as you make mistakes, you have to forgive them their mistakes. Both of you have to hold hands together, and when it works, both of you take the accolades. But more importantly, when it doesn't work, don't shoot the poor agency.
Yeah.
All, in my belief, all advertising is as good or as bad as the client is.
Absolutely.
And
The
I think,
client gets what it deserves.
correct, absolutely. And therefore, to my mind, I think what typifies and has been so, whether it's the Pidilite Ogilvy relationship or Piyush and my relationship, it's simply a relationship of equals with the passion of creating great stuff.
Hmm.
It's not that we've got it right all of the time,
Hmm.
but when we haven't got it right, we've said, let's learn from this. It's smart failure and let's move on. Fortunately, most of the times we have got it right, and therefore you create an enduring relationship. The great thing now is, far before an idea comes to the client, it is discussed threadbare just between the Pandey brothers, and when they feel it is Fevicol like and it meets the stature of a Fevicol idea, doesn't even come to the client.
Hmm.
Now, when you've got the country's foremost creative brains is also doubling up as your brand managers, you're always going to produce great work.
Hmm. Hmm. But, if you watch the showreel of Fevicol ads over the years, it's amazing, right? I mean, one is better than the other. But, I personally like the Unbreakable Egg one, of course. And the sofa one is my personal favorite. Touches your heart, right? And of course, the tug of war one. What is your personal favorite, Bharat? Of all the ads that you created?
Very difficult. It's like asking me to choose between children. But if I was to put my finger on it, I would say the sofa and the bus are my two
Hmm.
favorites. The bus for, actually just making the brand universal. I
Yeah.
mean, the fascinating thing is I've shown the bus at many international conferences
Mm.
and they get it straight away.
Hmm.
And the sofa, of course, it was 60 years. There's a lovely story behind the sofa. It was actually being first conceived as a radio ad.
Really.
And because, the agency felt it's too long and,
And there's the
will
music.
media
Yeah.
wait and so on and so forth. And we said, listen, this is it. This is 60 years.
Mm.
And we all held hands. And, sure, just to again break conventional wisdom, everybody tells you that attention spans today are very small.
Yeah.
Some marketer will tell you it's 8 seconds. Some will tell you it's 12. Some will tell you it's 15.
Yeah.
Do you know this was, I think in the year 2022 or so, it was the most shared ad in India on YouTube. It had a few million views.
Hmm.
It was 80 seconds. The
Amazing.
fascinating thing is I had friends of mine sending me and saying, have you seen this? I said, I mean, if you don't mind, we made it. But
Yeah.
it's like, it had a life of its own. So if you produce great work,
People will watch it.
people will watch it.
Listen
So
to it.
my favorite is definitely the sofa, I would say, and the bus for that era.
Yeah, I think every marketing student should watch the sofa ad and see how you can connect emotions to something as mundane as adhesive, right? Uh, Tell me, they're all deeply memorable ads, Bharat, and they all show the brand promise so well. My question is, with traditional advertising no longer being the dominant force it was in the past, and in the backdrop of digital marketing, media fragmentation, customer fragmentation, and the difficulty of measuring effectiveness, how should consumer companies look at allocating the marketing dollars? Do you believe that traditional advertising will continue to play a part in building brand salience? Or will this be taken over fully or at least largely by digital and performance marketing? I mean, what is your view in terms of the science and craft of marketing versus the art of marketing?
See, I think that's a great question. And, Shubha, I've had the privilege, I would say, of having operated across developed and developing markets.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, there are some similarities, but the differences are far greater.
Yeah.
Now, as far as developing markets, which is where we are based, if you look at it, I think any sensible marketeer in an India, for example, would follow the three Indias approach.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have an offering and communication for premium India. You have to have an offering and communication for middle India, and you have to have offering and communication for aspirant India.
Yep.
I think traditional advertising still is very relevant to both middle and aspirant India, even in today's context.
Mm.
As I see it, obviously, digital is a new medium. Social media is a new medium. A lot of this, I mean, consumers' lives are changing. As marketeers, you have to play a non-intrusive, I would say, rewarding them for their time role in their lives. And I think, therefore, marketing will always remain an art and a science. It's never going to become fully quantitative. But I also don't subscribe to this old theory of, get gut feel right and everything else will follow. If you've got now this changing world where, for example, data gives me so much more precision in being able to target the consumer, target them at the point of truth, do stuff which I mean, it would be foolish for us not to look at that and move on that.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, listen, we live in, the best analogy I can give you is Test cricket was very popular when we were traditional marketeers.
Correct.
This is T20 cricket now in marketing.
Yeah.
You still have to score more runs than the other team, and you still have to keep people engaged. But you have to keep them engaged for far, what I would say, far more intense periods of time, those shorter periods of time.
Correct.
You have to do a lot more unconventional things. If, in the test era, if somebody had played the reverse sweep or the ramp shot or so on, all the purists would have sacked them the next day. Today, you're doing all of that as marketeers. So, I mean, my analogy is, listen, the basics, I mean, you still need to bowl well, you still need to bat well, but the adage now is look while you leap, not look before you leap.
Well said. Well said. Can you tell us today for your brand, what percentage will you allocate for social media versus traditional advertising?
See, in our case, again, if I look at the three Indias, it's more for premium India and part of middle India, you do a lot more of digital. But if I look at the gross, this thing, it'll still be between about 35, 65, 2/3 and 1/3.
Okay.
1/3 to digital and performance marketing, 2/3 still to mass media.
Yeah.
Because India is still a growing economy. The aspirant class wants to grow into the middle class. The middle class wants to grow into the upper middle class. The upper middle class wants to become the premium class. So you're doing a lot more things digitally. And the fascinating thing is, one of the challenges I gave my team, I remember a number of years, 7, 8 years back. I said, guys, when I see the list of the country's top 10 consumer brands, Fevicol figures, we don't figure in the list of the buzziest brands.
Yeah.
Lo behold, 4 years later, we are now amongst the top 10 buzziest brands. So if you follow Fevicol on Twitter, if you follow us on Insta, you will see there's a lot more exciting stuff. There's a lot of stuff that we're doing, so on, so forth, etc. Simply by saying, listen, there is a different consumer.
Yeah.
We have to, again, Fevicol's character is not going to change. Fevicol's tongue-in-cheek irreverence is not going to change. But the way Fevicol talks to that consumer, engages with the consumer, is definitely going to change.
Now, just moving gear, Bharat, from Fevicol to one of your earlier companies, which is Cadbury's. I'll take you back 2 decades exactly, or almost, when you were CEO of Cadbury's in India, and the worm crisis broke, right? In October 2023, a month before Diwali, the Food and Drug Administration Commission received complaints about worm infestation in 2 bars of Cadbury's Dairy Milk, which is a flagship brand with, at that point, 70% share of the market. Now, as Cadbury emphasized in its communications, the issue was not the product, but the way it was stored by the distribution channels and customers. Now, it must have been the CEO's worst nightmare to be in the middle of this crisis, but the way the crisis was handled has now become a textbook case study, and the brand bounced back in a few months' time with renewed trust and sales. Bharat, tell us a bit more about how you deftly managed that crisis, and what are some of the learnings that marketers and business leaders can take from this episode?
Sure. Great. I mean, even now when you talk of this, it gives me goosebumps. So
Uh-huh.
it still gives you, I still remember, life may things actually go full circle. We were in Bangkok. We were at the regional annual budget session.
Okay.
We were being feted as the team of the year. India was the team of the year.
Okay.
This was
Cadbury's globally.
2003.
For Cadbury's
For
globally.
Cadbury's for Asia Pacific. This was
Mhm.
a budget meeting for Asia Pacific in Bangkok. And I get this call from my head of incident management, who's also my head of R&D, saying we have an incident in Mumbai. There are these bars that are infested. So I said, listen, has the incident management team met, so on? And, it'll surprise you, but if you go to the net and do a search, infestation is common in food.
Okay.
Given our storage conditions, etc., not just in India, it's actually common across the world.
Mm-hmm.
But I land in India about 24 hours later, and there is media outside Cadbury House. This has become a full-fledged, headlines. And mind you, for 20 days of the next 30 days, Suvo, I was on national television.
Mm-hmm. For the wrong reasons.
And what's the facts of the matter? We were selling over 1 million bars of chocolate every day.
Yeah.
Across the country, we had about 8 different complaints, which is what we get all the time. A lot of times it's heat damage. What happens is if the bar gets perforated, the packaging gets perforated, then you'll have the meal moth. And I became an expert, I
on
must
this.
tell you, on all etymology after that. The Indian meal moth will lay eggs and those eggs will turn to worms. But here it was, there were being worms shown on television. In a month's time, our sales was down between 15 and 20%
Okay.
in the non-impacted markets and 30 to 40% in the impacted markets. We had a full-blown crisis. There were people telling our employees that, listen, you better look for a job. Your company is going to close down, so on and so forth, etc. This was Diwali. There's a lot of unsold stock. And I mean, this was something that no management book, nothing prepares you for.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I still remember we would have these headlines in the papers, and my wife would try and get up early in the morning and try and hide the papers and as if it's, and we would be in this, what we call the incident or the situation management room from 8 in the morning till midnight every day.
Uh-huh.
Now, really, when we looked at this objectively, we found that we had no problems with obviously every batch that you produce, every food company does this. You keep counter samples. There is no problem with the counter samples. The same batches were completely all right in the market when we were checking with other. So you knew it was a localized problem, but given the amount of coverage and what was happening, and there was all this, this had also been followed, this had just followed the Coke and Pepsi insecticide thing. So, multinationals were always already under attack.
Okay.
So what we said was, listen, let's first and foremost be very clear. Let's set the principles of doing this. Principle number 1 is we will not get into blame games. See, it's very easy to start blaming, the media is like this, the bureaucracy is like this, or the regulators are like. We've fallen down. The difference between a good company and a great company is how quickly they get up and start running again.
Correct.
So let's not get into any blame games, external or internal.
Yeah.
Second, start and end with the consumer. The media will go away after some time. The regulator, hopefully when they're satisfied, will disappear. But if the consumer, if she goes away and doesn't come back, you've got a serious problem.
Correct.
So therefore, we put out research across, like I remember 4 or 6 major cities, impacted and lesser impacted, with just 3 questions. Will you gift it to someone? Will you gift it to your children? Will you consume it yourself?
Yeah.
And we were measuring this on a weekly track. We also realized that the consumer at a broad level felt there's a problem. There was a wait and watch. They loved the brand too much to give up on it. But they were also saying, listen, with all this, I mean, should I not stop eating it for some time? So we realized that we needed to take some action. I mean, I could take the rational route of saying that, listen, I mean, if 1 million bars, if 10 are, getting spoiled, therefore 30 million bars in a month, I have this, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But we said, listen, here is the situation. Sales is down. People believe there's a problem. And Shiva, both you and me have worked in multinationals. To get any capital approved in multinationals is not easy.
Yeah.
But here, this is where the Cadbury system works. So on the phone, I remember I got new packaging equipment actually sanctioned in pretty much 12 hours.
Wow.
In 60 days, we actually had bought the equipment and rolled out. And basically what we did was it's like getting somebody to wear two pieces of clothing so that, it's almost impenetrable. We
Got it.
actually foil sealed the outer pack saying that nothing will go and make it bulletproof.
So you changed the entire packaging
We
based
changed
on
the
this.
entire packaging based on this in across. And, when you were doing this, therefore, principle number one, as I told you, was begin and end with the consumer.
Correct.
Second was don't blame anybody, but dare greatly, but act quickly. And therefore, this new packaging. The third was keep walking the streets, walk the towns, get your team behind you. When your team itself reads the papers, they get really nervous.
Yeah.
Shit, do we have a problem? I mean, so one of the things we did was we asked all our salesmen across the country to go out into the territories and buy 1,000 rupees of chocolate each from across outlets. Go home and open every bar. If there's a problem, report it back. If there's no problem, distribute it to your family and friends. Obviously, there was no problem. And therefore, there was suddenly a lot of determination of fellows, so on and so forth. As I was walking the streets, so on and so forth, I remember I was doing a meet in Surajkund, just outside Delhi, and I was talking to the team. And one of my sales guys, I still remember his name, young Amit Upadhyay, he puts up his hand and says, "Sir, हम अमिताभ बच्चन को क्यों नहीं लेते हैं?" तो मैंने कहा, अमिताभ बच्चन को क्यों? He says, "Sir, इस देश में लोग सिर्फ दो ही आदमियों की बात सुनते हैं, या वाजपेयी जी was then the prime minister,
या
अमिताभ बच्चन, बाकी लोग तो सर सब ऐड करते हैं, ये दोनों की लोग बात सुनते हैं."
They listen to Amitabh Bachchan and the Prime Minister.
And the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
So here I am driving back it's a long drive back to the Delhi airport. And I thought, listen, the guy, what he's saying makes sense.
Amitabh
Next-
Bachchan being the Indian superstar.
Amitabh Bachchan is God in India. He's
Correct.
like, five guys rolled into one.
Yeah.
So next day I called Piyush, my creative partner, and Sanjay, my marketing head, and said, listen, I think we should use Amitabh Bachchan as our brand spokesperson. They said, but we've planned this emotional campaign and so on. I said, just think about it. To their credit, both came back in the afternoon and said, I think it's a good idea, we should. We arranged a meeting, Piyush arranged a meeting with Mr. Bachchan, and we actually told him, Mr. Bachchan, for the first time, you will truly have to be a brand spokesperson. This is not about you being a model.
Yeah.
And for that, before you agree, we did a small presentation.
Yeah.
Told him what we thought.
Yeah.
And said, before you agree, why don't you just come and see our factory? So he came, he saw the factory, he was really impressed. He said, listen, and that was his idea. Let's shoot the first commercial in the factory. And we had this commercial where he looks straight into the eye of the camera and says, listen, I've been eating Cadbury chocolate for like many, many years, 50 years or so. But when I read these reports, I also got a little worried. And then I asked the Cadbury guys, what's this I'm hearing? In return, they took me to their factory. They showed me their new packaging. Now I'm resting at peace, so on and so forth. And we did this as the first thing we did, followed it up with one with, his granddaughter as a model. And we were finding that mothers and teachers were restricted and, still afraid. So therefore we did a lot of stuff. But I'd say, sure, the three big lessons is keep the consumer at the center.
Yeah.
Our greatest benefit was I had a great team, which was holding hands and saying, listen, we may have fallen, but we will get up and get up well. And the third is we were out there fighting when nobody was blaming X, Y, Z. You could have done this better. You could have done that better, so on and so forth. And we said, always tell the truth and act ethically. Don't do anything that you will regret later. In India, a lot of fixers will come and say, I'll fix this for you. So listen, we've done no wrong and we don't need any fixing. We will do it the hard way. The lovely thing is, I remember I had stood up in a company town hall and said, guys, my objective is, I promise you, we will be standing here 1 year later and our consumer scores will be the same they were before this incident. The lovely thing was in 7 months, we were at the same level. And today the brand is about 10 times its size since then.
Wow.
So I think it's like, the benefits of a great team. And even now when you look back upon it, I think just doing the right thing.
What a story. Amazing. No, well done on that. I think it's gone down in the annals of history of how to handle the crisis. Bharat, going to your previous job before Cadbury's, Asian Paints, where I spent, unfortunately, just a year after my business school, I moved on to banking. You were there much longer. You set up the marketing function there. Asian Paints is a prime example of a family-run company in India which had a professional management very early on. Tell us a bit more about how you went about in Asian Paints and setting up the amazing sales and marketing machinery, and what do other companies have to learn from them?
I think the great thing, I still remember, Shiva, my father comes from the armed forces. I had two multinational jobs post-placement in Asian Paints, and I went to this legendary professor of ours, Professor Labdi Bhandari, and asked him his views. And he
This
recommended,
I'm Ahmedabad, yeah?
I am Ahmedabad,
Correct.
yes, and he suggested Asian Paints.
Mm.
And I remember my dad saying, Beta, this Asia Paints, I didn't even know Asia. Nobody has heard of. Are you sure these multinationals, their products are available in our canteen stores department?
Yeah.
We use them. I mean, are you sure you're doing the right thing? And I said, Dad, I'm listening to my professor. And I must say, I really thought I did the right thing because I found Asian Paints a great learning experience.
Yep.
The kind of responsibility they gave you at a young age. I was also lucky, Shivo, in most of the times I was amongst the youngest people in my batch in IIM. I was, I think, the youngest branch manager in Asian Paints, the youngest marketing manager. At, I think, the age of 24 or 25, I was one of the marketing managers of Asian Paints.
Amazing. Amazing.
And the freedom that, the buck stopped at you.
Yeah.
I mean, while obviously you took approval from your general manager, who was an outstanding gentleman called Mr. Abraham, uh, the responsibility was yours.
Yeah.
I was very clear. Having again seen industry, I thought India was then, just beginning to see the power of what I thought was great marketing. Doordarshan had got its Ramayan and Hum Log and so on.
The
second
national
channel was
channel.
coming.
Yeah.
Cable was on its way.
Yeah.
You suddenly realize that marketing is going to make a difference. And I remember saying, listen, I don't want to do my next job in sales and I want to do it in marketing.
Yep.
And they said, but we don't do much marketing. And I said, that's why I want to do it.
Yeah.
And I must say, I finally spent, I think, 87 to 11 years in marketing and then sales and marketing. And it was greatly rewarding because we launched, a lot of the products which are now famous. We became, by far, when we started, when you were asked to name a paint company, we used to not be named in the top two.
Mm.
By the time 10 years later, we were 80% named us as the first paint company.
Wow.
So it was very rewarding. I think they gave you a lot of freedom, wonderful culture to work in. But then I thought I needed a product that tasted a little better. So that's where I went on to Cadbury chocolates.
Right. No, but Bharat, you from paints to chocolates to adhesives and waterproofing solutions, you managed businesses across a wide product channel matrix. Tell me, what has prompted you to work in different industries? Why industry to one industry, for example? And what are some of the key marketing and business insights you could apply across different roles?
Again, great question. See, I started with paints. I loved it. And, in our time, life was much easier. Brighter fellows like you went to banking, so on and so forth. I think 13 or 14, I joined in 82 and 95, 90, I was head of sales and marketing. I was all of, 33 years old.
Yeah.
And I was very happy doing that. And then, one of my mentors, when Cadbury headhunted me, I was taking his views and he explained to me that, listen, if you want to do what you're doing for the next 20 years, because above me then was only family.
Yeah.
Then you should do what you're doing. Otherwise, and India was opening up. The multinationals were coming back with a great focus. So I was keen to test myself in an environment where there was greater competition. There was a greater role of marketing. You wanted to see what learn from the multinationals, as you would say. And a combination of all of that, I mean, I had a very harmonious exit. In fact, I left Asian Paints at the age of 37 and they gave me a silver salver for services. And, it was almost as if I was retired. Till today, I have lovely relations with the families.
Of course.
It was rewarding, but I just felt the time had come to look at new frontiers. And when I look back and introspect, I think it was the right decision. Looking at a category like chocolates, I mean, the lovely thing with chocolates is not only are you the favorite uncle of all your children's friends, you're the favorite person of your whole family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then I was lucky, basically Cadbury told me after some time, you've damaged India enough, go and damage the rest of the world. So I went off to Asia Pacific. I ran China for a year. And then I was at global chocolate, when again, you're handling all of the world's chocolates. Kraft took over Cadbury and I was fortunate to get the combined job which added Toblerone, Milka. It was a great learning experience. Working across cultures, working across geographies, developed and developing. I think it just helped me grow tremendously as a person. But my heart was always in India. And, some things are written, Shubho. I had no intention or, I never, I actually, Mr. Parekh invited me to join the board of Pidilite in about 2007.
Mm-hmm.
And after some discussions, I joined the board and I was enjoying myself on the board, doing things, helping transform the company
While being in Cadbury.
while being in Cadbury. And
Right.
then I was here in Mumbai. I remember 2013 end on a board meeting when the families asked me, can we take you out for dinner? And I said, listen, I'm here for your board meeting. I mean, of course I'll come for dinner. And I'm wondering why do they want to all meet me for dinner? And that's when they sprung on to me that we'd like you to now be the first non-family head of the company.
Hmm.
And I remember 6 months of discussion. My wife and me sat on a lovely beach in Florida. One thing I was very clear about show was that I wanted to come back to India. I
Okay.
knew India was happening. I liked India. I loved working in India. I didn't, a lot of people were surprised you could take this citizenship. That's it. I said, listen, I'm very happy to come back and run something in India. And I had reached where I had in the multinational world.
Mm-hmm.
I also knew it was very difficult to get the top job if you haven't handled the home market in a
Yep.
big American company.
Yeah.
And so therefore, again, I had a very harmonious exit from Mondelez also. They tried to persuade me a fair bit.
Hmm.
But in the end, I see coming back to India, drinking from two fire hoses at the same time.
Hmm.
And adhesives, construction chemicals, more similar to paint than to FMCG, but we also have an FMCG business because there are consumer adhesives like a Fevicol and our art material. So it's like, running a mini conglomerate and trying to create something that hopefully is an enduring Indian institution that goes on and, it's on a big journey. But on that journey, we have our vision where we say, together we will create a high performance, innovative Indian multinational
Yep.
where it's a pleasure to work.
Mm-hmm. And what a big journey, Bharat. You, quadrupled the market value of this company from, 5 billion to 20 billion in 10 years?
Yes, I promise you, I have not done anything. It's the benefits of having a great team and, again, a great environment. But yes, it's been a wonderful journey. You've been drinking from two fire hoses at the same time. We've done a lot of stuff. I mean, today we have, for example, our business split into 3 categories, which are called growth, pioneer, and core.
Mm-hmm.
When we started on the journey, 80% of our business came from core.
Yep.
20% from growth and pioneer. It's now 55-45.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a wonderful journey and it's a journey that will continue. And I would, again, strongly advocate that India is an emerging market. I still think the best is to come. So hopefully you will see a lot more of Pidilite in the coming years.
Of course. Bharat, you moved from family-run business like Asian Paints into multinational, then back into a family-run business like Pidilite. What are some of the lessons you carry between these? And culturally, was there a big adjustment from one to the other and back to the first category?
It is a definite adjustment. See, between a family-run company or a family-managed company,
Yeah.
and multinational, it's the multinational by definition has far better systems, far more rigor in capital allocation, but is definitionally therefore much slower.
Yeah.
If you're part of a larger region, a lot of times if China has a problem or Southeast Asia has a problem, you have to bear the consequences and underinvest in your market, so on.
Correct.
Decision making is a little slower.
Yeah.
But it's more solid and elephant-like.
Mm-hmm.
Family managed businesses, and I always maintain, Shovo, that if you have a family that has both capability and commitment,
Yeah.
they will win every time. Because they will create a culture and an environment
Mm-hmm.
which is what I call in Pidilite, we call it a proneurial environment.
Mm-hmm.
The mixture of professional and entrepreneurial.
Correct.
Can I get the capital allocation, the rigor, the capability building, the people systems of a multinational? But can I get the entrepreneurial risk-taking ability, the apolitical nature, the quick decision-making of an entrepreneurial company?
Yeah.
If you can combine that, you have an unbeatable combination.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, I would say both have advantages and disadvantages. The perspectives that you pick up in a multinational, especially when you're working outside India, handling different geographies, your influencing skills in a multinational have to over-index to the power of 10.
Correct.
Because everybody in the multinational, especially when you're in staff jobs, is going to tell you, this is not invented here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And I remember our famous statement, we used to all laugh as a team. Every CEO will tell you, it's a great idea, but it won't work in my market. My market is different.
Correct.
So managing that, still managing to make a success of that, that's a different set of skills in a multinational. In a family managed company, you have to get very clear about the roles and responsibilities of the family versus you. You have to also realize that it's and it's not versus. I mean, I was very clear from day one that the family had so many advantages. I mean, they've spent, 50 years building this business. They know more about what is under every brick than I will ever know. For me to ask them, a lot of times I'll be asked this question by analysts or journalists, has the family stepped aside? And I would say, I don't want them to step aside.
Yeah.
This has to be an end relationship because
Yeah.
that's what's going to make us win.
Correct.
And if you get that model right, in that model, frankly, you have to lose a few battles to win the war.
Yeah.
You have to slay a few holy cows also in the process.
Mhm.
But overall, I would say it's, again, needs influencing skills of a very different nature.
Yeah.
It also knows what is negotiable, what is not. But if you have, again, as I said, a capable and committed family, which has therefore the right intentions, I think it's a very workable relationship.
From a pure stress factor, would you rate higher stress for a family-run company as a professional manager versus a multinational? Where were you more stressed, Cadbury's or Pidilite?
See, if you ask my wife or my children, they will tell you that I'm not a guy who gets stressed easily.
We'll come to that later,
Okay.
yes.
But having said that, the stresses are the multinationals, the stresses are more on the internals, the ability of the multinational to deliver, so on, so forth, etc. And in multinationals, you have to realize that, these frequent restructurings that are going to take
Yeah.
place, there's going to be these matrices which like at times will work in your favor, they won't. Beyond a certain level, you have to realize that it's not your capability. The sword could fall anywhere and don't take it personally.
Yeah.
That's a different kind of stress. Okay. In a family managed company, I think if you've got the relationships right, then the stress is the buck stops at you. See, in a multinational, every decision making is diffused and takes a long time. Everything is socialized. I mean, I still remember when I came new to Pidilite, somebody would ask me something and I'd say, good idea. And next, week they would be implementing. In a multinational, that's the beginning of a 1 year discussion.
Very true. Yeah. And much less ownership, right?
Yes.
Bharat, you've invested out of Pidilite into some startups like Home Lane that have done quite well. We have seen in recent past multiple direct-to-consumer brands that want to boil the ocean in consumer non-durables. What is your view of disruption in this space? And are you worried about it as Pidilite?
Not worried, but we'd like to remain completely engaged with it. It is, again, as when we spoke of as marketeers, if the consumer is now living a different life, the mobile phone has become the center of our lives, as has social media, as has the internet. We must make sure that businesses that understand this world better than us, we're engaged with, we are learning from, we're understanding from and investing in. Therefore, at Pidilite, we've invested in a number of such businesses, not just for financial return. Obviously, we're financially prudent.
Yeah.
But the bigger thing is learning from them, learning about their consumer. Is she very different? Is he very different?
Yeah.
How do we need to change base Pidilite? And again, it's been a rewarding journey. I mean, that's helped us also become far more agile in certain areas and also not worry about some things that don't matter.
So are you looking at taking over many more of the DTC brands?
We do that all the time. Every 3 months, we will invest in one or two of such brands. Wherever we see a good business model and something that is adjacent to us, something that is relevant to us.
And talking of relevance, we saw Pidilite is now entering the lending business. We're setting up an NBFC to provide credit to its domain ecosystem. I mean, welcome to the world of banking. And what are your plans to grow this business?
See, we are very clear, Shubha. Unfortunately, everything gets called an NBFC.
Yeah.
Pidilite has an amazing ecosystem. I mean, just to give you an example, I have 220,000 furniture contractors on my Fevicol app.
Wow. Okay.
I have more information about them. I have a KYC of them already that exists in far greater detail than a bank ever will. Add to that masons, add to that plumbers, add to that time layers. Then I have close to 200,000 large dealers with exactly similar profiles. A lot of these fellows find it very difficult to get credit from the conventional system.
Yeah.
So we said, listen, let's pilot this. This is not going to become our core business. we will commit a certain capital. So we went to the market and said, we're going to be very disciplined. First, we will pilot in the city of Bangalore, where we're carrying out the pilot. We will come back to you with the results in the pilot. If we find it is something of use and we're finding that, listen, this could be a great venture for Pidilite, we will find the right partners, so on and so forth, etc. We're not going to get distracted from our core businesses.
Okay.
So again, this is again restricted. We're not ever going to become a company that is financing TVs or toasters or whatever be. It will be in our domain to people we know, which is large enough for us to make a viable business.
Got it. The kind of stuff Uber has done for their drivers, for example,
Yes.
in the US. Yeah. Now, just shifting gear from there on your plans, with economic optimism running pretty high in India, more and more Indian companies are looking to expand abroad. In Pidilite, you operate in many countries in South America, Africa, Middle East, and Asia. Many of them you set up personally. Question, Bharat, is how easy is it for an Indian brand, a successful Indian brand like Pidilite, like Fevicol, to find acceptance overseas? Do you have to follow the same recipe you've done successfully in India, or do you have to target different kind of customers, different markets with different messages? What kind of adaptation have you had to do in these markets?
Great question. See, we're very clear we want to be an emerging markets multinational. We will operate only in markets that are affinity markets, markets similar to India, where the India model, and obviously we know that the India model can't be transplanted, but where the principles of the India model, create brand, work with influencers, offer better product, keep at it, don't worry about the short term.
Yep.
I'll give you the best example I'll give you is Bangladesh.
Mhm.
We were by no means the first company into Bangladesh. We were actually the fifth.
Okay.
Fast forward to 10 years later, we're now the leading company in across adhesives in Bangladesh. We've now introduced waterproofing. We will now introduce tile adhesives. Exactly the same model in India. The lovely thing, the greatest compliment I got was I went to Bangladesh and the immigration guy asked me, "So what brings you to Bangladesh?" And I said, "I work for Fevicol." And he played out the Fevicol ad for me.
Amazing.
He told me about the Fevicol ad and I said, "Listen, we're doing this the right way in Bangladesh." So, therefore, our
So do you run the same
focus,
campaigns in Bangladesh as well?
not
or
same,
similar?
adapted, but similar, but
Similar.
the same principles.
Okay. Got it.
So it's like, say, in Sri Lanka, I have Roshan Mahanama as my waterproofing specialist. Now he talks about like waterproofing. Now he's somebody who's well known.
Yeah.
So like this, we're clear, emerging Asia, Middle East, Africa. This is our focus. We've got units now in Egypt, Kenya. We've got a unit in Dubai. We've got obviously units across the Indian subcontinent, two in Bangladesh, one in Sri Lanka. So we will keep expanding in areas where we believe we have a right to win. We know the consumer and the customer better.
Yep.
And we're in it for the long. We're not in this for the, trying to do great financials and saying we will be international in 3 years and 5 years. Just do it the right way, the Pidilite way. And fortunately, up to now, we've been fairly successful.
Great. Now, Bharat, a different question. Technology and digitization are impacting everything across the world, whether it's financial services, whether it is social media, whether it is our day-to-day lives. How are businesses in the FMCG and consumer durable markets changing or getting disrupted as a result of this? Do we see adoption of technologies like blockchain, AI, IoT, 3D printing, metaverse, etc., or AR, VR in these areas, or are these still a bit removed from the new technologies?
No, you have to embrace the new technologies and see what they can do for you. It's like, say, for example, take AI. Now, we have a number of use cases with a lot of people in the market. I'm a very firm believer that, listen, whether it is marketing or it is technology, it should finally benefit my business.
Yep.
Now, it could take a little longer in some cases. I'm not worried about that. So therefore, if, somebody is doing a use case with me and saying that, listen, I will increase your conversion of consumers who call you from 20% to 40% via the use of AI. I said that's a use case worth doing.
Correct.
So like this, we're obviously at every point adopting technologies and saying, listen, let's put in money there. Let's back these. Because as a leader, you must keep experimenting. It's very easy to become, it's like the D2C space we spoke about. Most D2Cs still haven't figured out the formula of going beyond this magical 150, 200 crores.
Yeah.
That's where you get stopped at and then there's a struggle.
Correct.
Can we be a company that helps these guys do that, so on and so forth? So in each of these areas, we're trying to see, can technology help business experiment? I mean, at Pidilite, we call these pilots.
Okay.
At any point of time, across new products, across new technologies, across uh, various facets of operation, we will have a number of pilots running.
Mm-hmm.
When we get the pilot right, we will then scale up.
Okay. Got it. Let's now talk a little bit about ESG, Bharat. The consumer goods industry is under the spotlight regarding adoption of ESG and sustainability practices. I believe 80% of greenhouse gas emissions are estimated to reside in the supply chain of consumer durables. Consumers, employees, of course, and investors are looking at this as an important factor of choice. It's not just a good to do, but also it's probably essential to do going forward. What progress or enhancements would you think we will see in the next decade or so in this area?
I think, sure, ESG is now, obviously acquired a fair degree of importance.
Yeah.
But responsible companies were anyway doing a lot of this even earlier,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, it's like, for example, a number of years back, we took a decision at Pidilite saying that, listen, we will not just measure ourselves against chemical companies in India.
Yeah.
Let's take the best international companies. We hired one of the big four, asked them, work with us to make a sustainability roadmap. We will put that sustainability roadmap out into the public.
Yeah.
We will publish a sustainability report every year with targets. And every year we're exceeding targets because it's very clear. And, a lot of Indian groups have shown this over past.
Yeah.
You have to first and foremost be a good corporate citizen where you are. People should be happy with you being in the place. I mean, I'll give you, if you see the work that we've done around, for example, Gujarat,
Yeah.
we're one of the showcases for the Gujarat government on the work done around regreening, check dams, water. We actually, are water positive as a company.
Really.
All of the work that we haven't done this only because it became statutory to do so. We've done this for years to come.
Mhm.
And again, I tell all of my factories, for example, that listen, if I come there, local administration should say, listen, these guys are asset to have in this area. So, don't just tell me you don't do waste, etc. Be good corporate. So when during COVID, we were doing anything that the administration required where they were struggling with the bureaucracy, we would help them with. All of that at the end will make you a company where people will say that, listen, these guys at least are always doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And to my mind, ESG is about that. I mean, if you look at our board today, our board is one of India's marquee boards. Every single person has been the CEO of a very well-respected company, Indian or multinational.
Okay.
We're clear that it starts with governance, get the governance right, work with governance. We have a clear sustainability set of, both from the sustainability and environment point of view, we've got clear targets.
Yep.
And socially, I mean, we've been a company that's been spending more than what, statutorily we're supposed to spend on CSR for years. And
Amazing. That's great. But I'll move to a philosophical question now. With increasing purchasing choices and in lower customer loyalty, and of course proliferation of brands, plus customer fragmentation, we are seeing brands seemingly losing universal relevance. More and more categories are becoming commoditized. The millennials and Gen Z are known to be more promiscuous in their brand choices. And research shows that, top brands, while they drive higher shareholder returns, the concept of branding might be losing importance. Do you subscribe to this view, or do you see brands in the future becoming more relevant?
I'm very clear about this show. Brands can only become more relevant. The more confused you are, the more choices that you have, the more you want to rely on somebody whom you can, in a sense, almost lean on and say, listen, with this brand, I can be sure. I completely agree that the way of building brands is changing. If I believe that, the good old days where I would put out mass media advertising and hope for behavior to change, those days are gone. But the relevance of the brand, the building of the brand, and making sure that the brand is relevant, contemporary, has a high degree of affinity stroke affection.
Yep.
I think if you're losing sight of that, then you might as well sell rice or chawal or rice or atta.
So you think brands become a bigger responsibility for the brand managers to create and
Absolutely,
sustain.
yes. It's
And
just that they have to do it differently. They have to like think differently, and they have to start thinking like, business managers of that brand or
yeah,
of that category.
yeah. And obviously you've done a great job in this area with Fevicol and all your Pidilite brands. But for this podcast, I spoke to a few of your colleagues and ex-colleagues, who shall remain unnamed for obvious reasons, who once said that you have an amazing personal touch, within quotes. Another said you have, quote unquote, heartwarming humaneness. A third said you're a wellspring of creativity and enthusiasm. Now, that's a lot of praise. What is your secret sauce of your style at work? Is it the influence of your wife and my ex-classmate Alka, or is it something else?
I think all of us are products of our environment.
Mhm.
Okay. So obviously, for example, the lovely thing I have with my wife is not only is she my wife, she's also my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
She's somebody who's been in the corporate world. She's far smarter than I am.
Uh-huh.
And therefore, I will always use her as a sounding board. I was very lucky to grow up in a very uh, nice armed forces environment where, you got almost, I still remember my dad telling me the two lovely messages where he said that, listen, son, in the army, we have only two kinds of generals.
Mm-hmm.
Those whose troops will give their lives for them and those who lick above and kick below. Just
Okay.
make sure that you're in the first category. And second is don't do anything in life that doesn't let you sleep in 10 minutes when you put your head on the pillow. Simple things that keep you. So I think we're a product of many influences. But really, if you ask me, what is my secret sauce? I would say three things.
Mhm.
First is I genuinely believe that the answer to good management lies in managing people well.
Okay.
So if you talk to lots and lots of people that I've worked with, not one of them will tell you that, listen, you can get away with, shoddy work.
Mm-hmm.
But tell the person it's shoddy work. Don't tell the person he's shoddy or she's shoddy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And at some point of time, hold their hand and show them what good work is, so on and so forth.
Mm.
The second is understand your spikes of where you can, over time you can make a difference. I know, for example, that my spike lies in the ability to understand consumers and then hopefully craft stuff that makes them change behavior. Frankly, that's the whole reason for business, right?
Okay.
Focus where that's a core requirement.
Mm-hmm.
See, build a team which complements and hopefully is smarter than you. And therefore I know, for example, I can tell you in all frankness, I'm not a fellow who dots the last I and crosses the last T.
Uh-huh.
But I'll always make sure I have a CFO, I have a strategy head, who therefore are my wicket keepers. Make sure that you have a team that complements you.
Correct.
And finally, most importantly, create an environment where people love coming to work, where when they fail, there is a mattress on which they can fail on and you are there to support them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can follow some of this, to my mind, life will always be much easier. And that's what I've tried to do. I can't say I've been successful all of the time, but it is, the good thing is as you get older, people remember only the good things about you.
Of course. But very well said, Bharat. Very well said. My final question. You play a very decent game of tennis, even now. If you were born today, would you choose tennis as a career?
No, I was never good enough to make it a career.
Okay.
I may have chosen tennis writing or tennis commentary, but maybe still as an interest. I still follow tennis passionately. I will still watch all of the major tournaments, so on and so forth, etc. But not as a player. I think the good thing is as long as you can play decent enough tennis, which you can help pull colleagues' legs, that's more than enough for me.
And finally, Bharat, with all your responsibilities, how do you manage to stay so full of good cheer? You have a smile on your face all the time. How do you manage that?
See, if you ask my wife, she will say that I don't have a smile on my face all the time. But listen, I've always said that the good thing is, we're not averting nuclear war. We're not solving for world hunger. We're either getting people to make their homes more beautiful, or we're getting them to have sweet stuff and feel a little happier, or we're helping them to stick things together, which will remain. Don't, for heaven's sake, take yourself so seriously and don't, in the end, there is more to life than only what you're doing. And just see it in perspective. And I think I always believe in the adage that in the end, it's not what you say to people after time, it's how you made them feel. And follow that, hopefully. So that's what I have tried to follow, hopefully, for most of the time.
Bharat Puri, well-known CEO in India, marketing icon globally. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And from all our listeners, thank you and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Sho. It's been an absolute pleasure. I must say, you've brought lots of lovely memories back and you've asked lots of incisive questions. Thank you, but it's been a wonderful
And
experience.
thanks for all your lovely answers. Thank you.
Thank you.
This podcast is proudly brought to you by MasterCard.
Money Majlis is sponsored by Weo Bank. Fuel your ambitions with banking designed to power your success. Discover more at weo.io.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Network International, the leading digital payments technology company in the Middle East and Africa.
Money Majlis is proudly supported by Aqua Now, the premier crypto as a service provider, now building in partnership with the top financial institutions in the Middle East. Discover more at aquanow.com.
That's it for this edition of Money Majlis. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with the legend that is Bharat Puri. If you did, please subscribe to Money Majlis and share with your friends, colleagues and family. And if you have inputs or comments, please email me at suvo@moneymajlis.com. That's suvo@moneymajlis.com. Before I sign off, let me say a big thank you to my friend Alka Puri for facilitating this interview in Mumbai. The Puris are a wonderful couple, so made for each other. I wish them the best. Goodbye and ma salama. Stay well and do good.